Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Mindful Marathon podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk, and today's episode is a special one. It's just you and me. So, before we dive in, I want to share a recent review that totally made my day. I'm just going to bring it up here. So, this review is from Dr. Sarah. She writes, Dr. Michelle and her guests provide so many valuable gems of information on this podcast. It makes running feel so much easier and more accessible. There is so much knowledge and enjoyment here. And if you are thinking about running, this is the place to come for positive encouragement, no judgment, and incredibly helpful advice. Thank you for creating this podcast, Dr. Michelle. And thank you for writing a review, Dr. Sarah. I really appreciate it. If you are out there listening and you've been enjoying the podcast, I'd love if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps to grow the show and to reach more runners who are looking for a more mindful, joyful approach to training. And I so appreciate all of you being here, and I appreciate it for those of you who have left reviews. So thank you. Thank you. So now let's get into the episode. Today's episode is going to be a recap of the Run Disney Springtime Surprise weekend, which I just returned from, so it's fresh in my brain. And it was a great time, and I can't wait to share everything with you. So let me set the scene a little bit for you. If you've been listening to the podcast and you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I love Run Disney and I love me a Mickey race very much. I think so. I've always loved Disney, even before I became a runner. But I think that it holds a special place in my heart because my first couple of long distance races were run at Disney. Like my first half marathon was in 2016. I ran that with my mom and my mother-in-law. And my first marathon was in January of 2018, also in Disney. And so I think that's part of it. And over the years, I don't do all of the Run Disney races, but I do quite a number of them and have dragged a lot of family and friends along with me on this journey. And so I was so excited to run this April weekend because it was actually not planned ahead of time. Usually for Run Disney races, you have to sign up pretty much the day of registration because they're super popular and they sell out usually right away. So I wasn't actually planning to run this weekend. And in December, I was just looking to see if there were any registrations left because I realized that I had this time open up in April. And I thought, boy, that'd be really fun if I could get there for one of the races. And sure enough, there was a 10-miler registration left. So I talked to my Run Disney girlfriends, my crew, and they were nice enough to have me in their room and share their room with me. And I signed up, and the rest is history. I had a couple of intentions going into the weekend. Number one, I was going on a girls' weekend, so I wasn't there with my family or my husband, and I really wanted to soak all of that in. I haven't really done a girls' weekend in a while. Number two, two of my Mindful Marathon athletes were also running this weekend, and I had never met them in person. And I have been coaching them for several years. So shout out to Jamie and Daniela, who both ran the challenge this weekend. So I wanted to meet them. And then the third was that one of my Mindful Marathon athletes, who was also doing the challenge, we had talked about potentially having me pace her for the 10 miler. So those were really like the three intentions going into the weekend. So I will let you know how that all unfolded. So first of all, just a little bit of background about the weekend. There were three races as a part of this challenge. So if you sign up for the challenge, that means you do a 5K, a 10K, and a 10-mile race. So a total of 19.3 miles over 3 days. I was signed up solely for the 10-miler. I don't like to say just or only because it's still a 10-miler. So I was solely signed up for the third day. The nice part about that is that I didn't have to wake up early 3 days in a row. So if you're new to Run Disney, Let me warn you that the races start extremely early in the morning, usually around 5:30 in the morning. The good thing about that is you get out there before the sun comes up when it gets really hot. The bad part about that is that you have to wake up at what I call stupid o'clock. That's probably like 2:30 or 3 in the morning to be able to get on a bus and get to the staging area and get to your corral on time and all of these things. We can do a whole nother episode on preparing for Run Disney and registration and all of that, but that's the background. So now we're going to talk about what went well, and lessons learned, and then finish up with some magical moments. So things that went well. I'm going to give you three things that went well. So if you have a destination race upcoming, maybe these are some things that you want to work into your planning. So the first thing that made the weekend really smooth was the fact that our group had kind of decided ahead of time that we were not going to do any park time, that we were going to try to stay off of our feet as much as possible. It's really hard to do that in Disney, but we did a pretty good job. And the other thing was that we planned to go to bed early each night. So even though I wasn't running the 5K or the 10K, I went to bed pretty early with the other ladies so that I knew they were waking up, at a ridiculous time. And so if you're traveling with family or friends, having a plan going into the weekends is something that is really nice, and it's a great thing to talk about ahead of time so that it's not a surprise when you get there what you're going to do. The other thing that went really well was that I talked with my friends about a pacing plan for race day. So the thing with Run Disney is that everyone will get a corral assignment. This is the same with lots of races, big races. And so you can get a corral in the front of the race if you are a very fast runner and you submit what's called a proof of time. So you can use another race that you've run in the past to place yourself in a corral that is appropriate for your speed. And the thing about this, you don't need a proof of time. But if you do not submit a proof of time and you say, hey, I'm going to run this 10 miler in, let's just say, 2 hours, you might get seated into a later corral. And there's not an issue with that, except to say that if you're running with your friends or your family and you're all in different corrals, if you want to run together, then you would have to drop back. So when we looked at our friends between myself, who was registered for solely the 10 miler, and then the other three ladies who were registered for the challenge, between all of us, we were in three different corrals. So, so I dropped back. And several of the other ladies dropped back to match the one runner who did not submit a proof of time. And so we collectively decided that we were starting from Corral E. There were a total of corrals going through F. So we were second to last corral. But I think this is an important thing to talk about if you're going with your friends or your family to have a plan. Sometimes I have run by myself. The last race weekend we did in Run Disney in November was the Wine and Dine weekend. And during that 10K, my husband ran solo. He's quite fast. I ran with my niece, and my mom ran with a friend of ours, and we were all going different paces. But it's important to talk about that up front. And for the half marathon, I ran with my niece and a couple of my friends. And again, as long as you talk about it ahead of time and have a plan, and also have a plan for if things don't go the way you plan them to go in the middle of the run, have a plan for if you end up splitting up from your running partner or partners, how to meet up at the end. So I think that what went really well was planning ahead. And then the third tip I would have to make your destination race weekend go smooth is to really just be mindful about what you're packing, like what you need to bring for a longer distance race. And so the important things not to forget, right? Your sneakers, your sneakers that you usually wear. Of course, you can purchase another pair at the expo if you forget them or at a local running store, but it's always better to run in sneakers that you are used to. So I have a list of things to pack for a destination race, and I have a blog post about it, which I will link at the bottom of the podcast episode. But on that list are, yeah, sneakers, sun protection. So running in Florida in spring, very warm sunglasses, sunscreen, a hat, something to protect yourself from the sun. Another thing to remember to take whatever fuel and hydration you usually use, remember to pack those things. Again, you may be able to find them at the expo, but just in case, right? So I love a certain gel called Morton. And so I packed several of those. And then I also brought some electrolyte tabs to use throughout the week just to hydrate really well. Knowing that it was going to be so hot and humid, I just wanted to up my electrolytes a little bit and not just have tons and tons of free water. So, in addition to hydrating with water, I also had electrolytes, but I packed those. So, the things that I'm used to and that my gut is used to, I packed all of those things. So, those were three things that went really well. There were lots more things that went well, but then we're going to go into lessons learned. So, maybe something that either didn't go as planned or surprised me, and what I learned. So I'm going to share that the biggest thing that I was worried about was moving to lower Corral. So I was originally assigned Corral B based on the proof of time that I submitted, and I moved back to Corral E, and I was nervous about running in the sun. So the race started at 5 o'clock, but we were planning to probably cross the start line around 5:45 based on where we were placed in the corral. And I was nervous because it was so hot and humid, and I thought the best thing would be to get ahead of the sun and try to finish the race before the sun came up. That's really what I was most worried about. Um, and the truth of the matter is that we were totally fine. The sun started coming up around when we hit like mile 9, and it really wasn't up and getting warmer until well after we had crossed the finish. We were taking lots of pictures with our medals, and we had stretched and sat and waited for friends, took photos. Like we had done a lot of stuff, and probably at least another 45 minutes or an hour went by before things started really heating up. And so, this was really hard for me as a recovering type A, overachieving person who loves to plan and who has always done it a certain way. It was really a little bit hard for me to move back to this corral and run with my friends and kind of suspend my suspicions that things were going to be really hot and maybe not great by the end of the race. And the truth of the matter is that I was completely wrong, and this totally surprised me. I had no trouble keeping my pace in Corral E. There were a few spots on the course that were a little bit crowded. One in particular, just a smaller area on sidewalk where we had to slow down quite a bit. But that was really the only section where I felt like I was not running the pace I wanted to run. And so I just want to encourage you out there if you're running a race with a friend or a family member, or you're doing things a little bit differently from what you usually do. It's going to be okay, and it may even open your mind to do something different the next time. So that's really for me, that was a big surprise. Okay, and last, I want to share just a couple of magic moments, we'll call them, like one or two special moments throughout the weekend that were reminders to me of why I run. The first one was really meeting Jamie and Daniela and meeting these runners who I've worked with for years and who I've never met in person. Like we've seen each other over Zoom and we've talked 100 times, but to meet them and hug them and meet their families was really just a beautiful experience. And the second thing, the second moment was around mile 9.5, I would say, 9.5 of the 10-mile race. I was running with my athlete, Allie, and we had run together in November during the Wine and Dine Challenge, and there was a point in the race, that was, toward the end of the half marathon where the sun was up. It was so hot. She was struggling, and at that point, I think she was questioning whether she was going to finish the race or just like why she was doing this in the first place. And we worked together throughout this training cycle in preparation for Springtime Surprise. And we ran together during the 10 miler. And we get to mile 9.5, which is like around the time of the half marathon where things were really falling apart and not going well. And she turned to me and she just said, Michelle, I have goosebumps. Like, this is where I was struggling. And like, I feel amazing right now. I feel amazing. And I got goosebumps too. And then we took off. We took off toward the finish line. And that was just a beautiful moment. And the choir was right there. You could see the finish line. It was just like the culmination of the last, 4 or 5 months that she'd been training and working toward this goal. And again, it just reminded me of why I run and why I coach others to find their version of joy in running too. So, whether you're training for your next race or you're just getting started, I hope this episode gave you a few takeaways to carry with you into your own running journey. I want to share a free resource for you. So, if you're looking ahead to a half marathon, I have a free workshop that I think you'll really enjoy called Half Marathon Success. It's all about setting yourself up for a really successful race, no matter your experience level. So if you are preparing for your first half marathon or you're wanting to PR your next one, feel free to grab this free workshop. I will leave it in the show notes. And I think that'll wrap it up for today. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I will see you next time on another episode. Until then, happy training, happy running, and have an awesome day.